Alrighty. Sweet. Okay. So now we have. This is my favorite part. Holy man. Smoking cessation. Actually, getting to talk about the medicine that helps with the smoking cessation. And there's such beautiful plants too. Oops, that one's not supposed to be in there yet. Um, they grow. Oh, that one's not supposed to be there yet either. There we go. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. There. Okay. So it's gonna be good. Got lots I want to share tonight. Share right now. So, yeah. So tonight we're actually gonna talk about the smoking cessation, the medicine that actually helps to stop smoking. um, this is super cool. So, like long time ago, long time ago for me because I'm just a kid, but long time ago, probably 6 years ago, almost like 6.5 years ago, because my daughter was just real tiny. Um, we did our first mental health and addiction session, and we did that in Zugamak. It was so cool. Um, One of the reasons why we created that mental health and addictions program is because we, well, actually, it's kind of funny because all we ever made was arthritis medicine. Like, that's all everybody wanted. Even though I could tell people, hey, we could teach about medicine that helps with diabetes, with women's medicine, with children, like child care. Like, we had a whole bunch of different programs. But all everybody wanted was arthritis. Oh, man. So for like 4 years, we just like toured the province to like hundreds of communities and or like over 100 communities, over 200 different institutions all over the place. All we did was arthritis salve. I was like real bored of it. I could do it with my eyes closed. I was like, man, like somebody else got to do this. I couldn't figure it out, trying to figure out like training sessions or something. I don't know. And then I was working for this organization in Toronto, ICES, the Institute for Clinical Evaluative Science. And there were a bunch of epidemiologists. They monitor all the big data in Ontario, and so like some of the top scientists are there. And I got to spend I get to spend a couple days with them every year usually. And so I was there. We were hanging out, walking around in Toronto. I was checking out all the medicine, and it was actually real cool. So I noticed though that guy, or one of the CEO for that organization, he was like just right beside me all day, just like stuck to my hip in my bubble all day, like. That would be illegal right now, how close he was to me. And he's real tall too, so he's like looking down on me all day, and he just keeps asking about mental health and addiction stuff like anxiety, depression, and inflammation, and opiates, and nicotine, and alcohol, or like whatever. Like he's just asking all, and I noticed a theme with all of his questions. So finally, I was like, hey. What you asking all these questions about mental health and addictions? You see, you're asking about all the same things. He's like, well, that's where all of our problems are. Like, that's where we're spending all of our money. Like, that's where we tell Health Canada to spend all their money, like something like this. So I was like, I don't know. I must have been like 23 or something like that, like still like just a kid, and so he's telling me that's where all the money was. So I was like, hey. I got into the car with my wife, and I was like, hey. It wasn't like a money hungry thing. It was like he just told me where everyone is spending all their money on mental health and addictions. But it wasn't like a money grab. It was like maybe this is my ticket out to stop teaching about arthritis salve. So I was like, I'm going to make a mental health program. So like me and my wife, we were in this little Subaru Outback, old school one. And so like those cars are so loud inside. Like once you get up to 70, 80 kilometers an hour, you can't even visit because it's too loud. You'd be yelling at each other. And then you get to 100. So like me and my wife were leaving Sunnybrook Hospital, and you take the 407 to get back home, and or the 400 or whatever, like a 400 series highway. So you have to go like 120 kilometers an hour. So like you can't visit. So I was like, we were like, hey, let's take the back roads, get back home, so that we could visit and we could kind of iron this program out. So so I remember, in our little Subaru, because it was too loud, we took a little back roads all the way home so that we could figure out, because we were like, maybe I don't have to teach about arthritis medicine anymore. And so then that program was born. We started delivering it all over the place. The first place that we did it, actually, when we did that program with ICES, that was in like the middle of summer, like July. And then we were not ready to deliver that program until the beginning of November. I was completely obsessed with all of the research to be able to properly execute that program. And then I lined up a couple places to run it as the pilot. And Zagamak was the first one that took it on the North Shore. And it was super fun. Beginning of November. It was real cold too. And then, our daughter was real small. And what we did is we had all of our mental health and addictions medicine. Like, so we have all of our medicine that we carry with us everywhere, like 180 different species of plants, all inside all the different types of jars that we bring everywhere, all the time. And with the mental health and addictions program, we separated all of the mental health and addictions medicine in one side of the room, all the other medicine in the other side. And we had like almost 60 species of medicines that help in some way or another with mental health and addictions. So it was a considerable amount. And then I'm standing in front of like these 20 something women in Zagamak, like, I have 3 days to teach you about all of these medicines. Obviously I couldn't. That's too much to learn. So I chose a few, and we went from there. Now we still deliver that mental health and addictions program, but it's I ask for 12 to 15 days, and those are 10-hour days, and with small breaks. None of these 1.5 hour lunch breaks. Like, people get 20 minutes, shovel a bunch of food in, and sit down and take notes all the rest of the day. So it's like real intense. And quite a few communities, I did this full like 15-day program, and it was really intense. It's so awesome. But the first time I was doing it, didn't really know what I was doing yet. I mean, I knew what I was doing, but I didn't know how to do it. And so, like, I remember talking with my wife. She was like, hey, all this medicine that we're going to teach about, this is really good, except for the smoking ones. Maybe you shouldn't teach about those. And I was like, what do you mean maybe we shouldn't teach about this? And she was like, well, you know what? Like, it's good to have medicine, to drink that tea, but then you're telling people to smoke something, and people might get the wrong impression, like smoking other plants. Like, I don't know, maybe you should just steer clear of that one. And so, like, I understand. I was like, oh, okay. And then, I'm a good boy. I want to listen to my wife, and so I didn't. And then I was like, we did the first day. Pounded through a whole bunch of medicine there with that first group in Sagamak. And then on the next day, the second day, I got about 2 hours in to the session, and then one of those women yells, hey, come you're not talking about those ones. And I was like, what do you mean? Which ones? And she was like, those ones right there. Because one of my jars, it's really beautiful, like bright red inside. And so she was super curious about that one. All day she just couldn't help but cut me off. What is that? And I was like, oh no. I was trying to hide them so that I didn't have to talk about them, so I could listen to my wife. And so I didn't listen to my wife, and I was like, oh, those are smoking medicine. And then I was like, oh man. So then they were like, what do you mean? And I was like, oh, you smoke these, they help with nicotine addiction and cannabis use. And so they were like, oh, you smoke it? So yeah. Then I had to go to the bathroom real bad. So I said, okay, take 5 minutes. I took off, went to the bathroom. I came back. Everyone was gone. The whole room was cleared out. And then this one woman came out, and I said, hey, where is everybody? Oh, I don't know. I was in the bathroom. And I thought, oh no, like my wife was right. Everyone just took off. Like they must have not wanted to hear about that. And I thought, well, there's still one other participant here. I might as well teach her anyways. And then we were giving her like about 15 minutes. And then, in Zagamak, where we were doing the workshops, it's like the workshop place, like the workshop room, and it's a part of a little plaza, like a complex. And the same complex has the police station inside of it too. So all the police are right next to us all day, as a part of the same building. And then teaching her. And then after a couple minutes, all their cars came back. But it was winter too, so the puddles were frozen. Puddles had ice on them. So their cars, when they were turning in, they were sliding around. So it looked real dramatic. There was like little rocks flying everywhere. It was like, holy man, these ladies just flying right in. And then I thought, oh, maybe they're mad at me. Like they went and got, like, I don't know, some kind of authority, and then I'm in trouble. So then the one head lady, I guess I could call her, she came busting in the room, and you could see she was holding something. And then she came up to the table, and then she just threw down right in front of me like a whole bunch of little Bob Marley pipes, like a whole bunch of little weed pipes. And as soon as because they asked, they said, how do you use this? You just smoke it? Yeah. How do you smoke it? Oh, however you want, they said. And then I went to the bathroom. So they all took off. They went to Larry's, like this paraphernalia smoke shop called Larry's, and then came back, went and got a whole bunch of pipes. They had a bunch of crushers that have a little marijuana leaf on top. They had papers. They had papers that smells like strawberries. They like went out. They got like everything, and they had enough for everybody to try. And they were like, "Now what?" And I was like, "I don't know. Well, just smoke it. Like, just put some in there and smoke it." And then they were mostly like older women. They were all really, really bad smokers, like really crazy, like smoked a lot. And we were kind of like, yeah, just smoke it. So they were like, okay. And then you could really tell some of them really knew what they were doing. This is like before legalization too. So it was like even more funny. But yeah, some of those ladies just rolling up real good. And then they went outside, and then when they were outside, it was real funny because they had all these little weed pipes, and we're like basically in front of the police station, and then they're all smoking out of these pipes, laughing away because they think it's funny. They're just smoking these flowers, and so they're just laughing away outside, and then they come back in, and they smell like a grass fire. Because like the Lobelia, it's not like the actual medicine for quitting smoking. It doesn't taste very good. It just tastes like hay, and so they all come in like a burnt hay bale, and then they're like, "Okay, well, now what?" And so they use their like 10 o'clock smoke break to go and get all those pipes, and they ended up smoking that probably like it ended up being just before lunch. They smoke all that Lobelia, and then we had lunch, And then because I know, like, I kind of know what's gonna happen, and like I've given this medicine to lots of people, and so I kind of know what's gonna happen. And then so I know they're probably not gonna go out for a cigarette. They'll kind of forget about their cigarette after lunch. Like, you have to smoke after you eat, and you kind of like, yeah, you'll forget about it. So I was like, just waiting and waiting and waiting. Once their plates were just starting to finish up, I just started teaching away. I just started yelling about a bunch of cool stuff, and they were like, "Oh," grabbing their notebooks. Their mouth is still full, and then I just started teaching. And then it wasn't until 2 o'clock. They were like, "Oh, let's have a snack." They had a snack, and then they were like, "Hey, we never went out for a cigarette after lunch." And then you could see them all just great big smiles, like, what is this stuff? how come we never went out for a cigarette? And then after their snack too, they were like, I don't even want to. And then we all kind of sat down, and I was like, okay, more mental health medicine. And then we went all day. And so I this was the first time I ever gave that medicine to a big group. So it was really significant for me. I only had personal, like, one-on-one kind of experience previous. But yeah, I said, well, take this medicine home with you. Take a little baggie. And we had like sandwich baggies, because like the caterers always make too much food and just give big bags for you to take stuff home. So there was like sandwich baggies. They didn't take no fruits home in their sandwich baggies. They put all this medicine in there. And oh man, it was so cute watching them all, crushing up with these little weed crushers, crushing up their medicine for smoking, and then putting it in their baggies, and then like making sure they have their that medicine to smoke. It was real funny. But then they all went home, and when they came back the next day, only one of the women said, like, out of the 22 people that were there, most of them were chain smokers. Like, most of them, like maybe 18 of them, had to get up in the middle of the night to have a couple cigarettes, because the craving would wake them up. Like, they were chain smokers, and it was really uncomfortable for them to have to sit and listen to me for 90-minute spouts sessions throughout the day. Like, they really didn't want to have to sit for that long. They would rather, been nice if we could smoke in here. Like, so they were bad. And only one of the women, sorry, I don't mean to keep saying bad like that, but only one of the women actually came back the next day and said, I had a craving after supper. Everybody else was like, I had supper and no cigarette. I watched My Young and the Restless, no cigarette. All of the triggers. And one of them though said, I had a craving after supper already, so I smoked a little bit of that medicine, and it held me off. Like, I woke up and I had a coffee by itself this morning. I just had a coffee, she said. So it held her off. And so it was super, super cool to actually get to do it with a bunch of people. And like, because I thought I was in trouble because I didn't listen to my wife. And then so my wife would be mad, but then all these other women going to be mad at me. I was just catastrophizing, but it ended up being super awesome. And I don't use that as an excuse to not listen to my wife, but I was super happy that I actually taught them about it, because we had an experience with a big group, and so I kind of want to just explain really fast what that medicine does. So it's called Shkodeo Bugoni, big red one called Lobelia cardinalis, Shkodeo Bugoni. And then there's Shkodeo Bugonis. That's a small Calms Lobelia, the diminutive suffix added to the end because this is a tiny, tiny little flower. And then there's Lobelia spicata, which is a little bit bigger in the grassy areas, woodlands as well. But it tends to be a little bit taller and a lot more dramatic looking. But yeah, we all call them the same thing, Shkodeo Bugoni. And the flowers themselves are very, very closely related to tobacco. Actually, the structure of them, when you're watching it grow in the wild, it looks just like a tobacco plant. It fruits just like a tobacco plant. It has the same, like, tobacco seeds. They're like, you get a teaspoon of seeds and there's like a million of them. Like, tobacco seeds are real tiny. And so same with lobelia, and the way that tobacco will make those little empty sacks of air full of the seeds. Lobelia will do the same thing. So it's like, it's very, very similar just in the way that it looks. So there is something important to understand about tobacco, and that it's not indigenous to North America. It's from South America, and arguably some species in Central America. And there was one species in the mountains in the southwest of the United States. But it was in the mountains, and that's actually where that species, what had to happen in order to create the species of tobacco that we could grow here, is it had to be bred with the species of tobacco that grows in the mountains to get that winter capacity, the ability to live throughout the winter, and to be able to handle the cold. And so there had to be some really tremendous genetic manipulation of the Nicotiana plant to be able to adapt it so it can grow up here. And so that took a long time to be able to develop. Growing nicotine in Canada is very, very, very new to our people. It was it was a gift from the South, and which speaks to the really extensive trade routes that we have. One thing that I really like to say to kind of make this continent very small, two things. Like, our word for the South is jaunong, like where it's green. And so, like, like, it's hard. People will say, "Oh, you didn't know about jungles in the tropics. Like, you stuck in the Great Lakes, like stuck in Northern Ontario. You can only walk. You only have your 2 feet. You didn't get to know what a jungle is like." But it's like, that's our word for the direction. South is where it's green, like we knew. And then also, like, this continent is actually quite small when it comes to a human and your 2 feet. In that, like, we could walk. We had ceremonies every year, twice a year, usually, in Green Bay, Wisconsin. So we have something called the Niagara Escarpment that starts in New York, and it goes from New York through all those states, through Manitoulin, through Tobermory, down into southwestern Ontario to Niagara Falls. It doesn't stop in Niagara Falls, though. That cliff, that escarpment, continues to go all the way to Green Bay, Wisconsin. That was a highway for the Anishinaabe, and we used it and we would go and gather there every year, sometimes twice a year. This entire escarpment is over 860 kilometers. So think of something that's 860 kilometers away from you right now, and think, would you ever pick up your family, your kids, and be like, "Okay, let's go hang out with everybody over there. Let's go for a walk." That's real far, holy man. But we used to do it sometimes even twice a year. And what's actually interesting about that is there's a organization for, like, hiking the Niagara Escarpment that you could get a badge. You get, like, these embroidered, like, the little badges you can embroider on a jacket or something. If you do the Niagara Escarpment from beginning to the end in less than 30 days. So you're to walk the whole Niagara Escarpment in one direction, you'll get a little badge. If you do it you prove it in less than 30 days. So that organization didn't choose 30 days because that's that to sort of, I don't know, like, make it prestigious to prevent people from getting the badge. Like, it's like a really honorable thing. Only athletes and professional hikers. No, they made that the length of that journey 30 days so that, like, most people can do it. And that's the reality of that 860 kilometer walk, is that most people can do it. So, and then on average, some of the more avid hikers can do this trek in just less than 2 weeks. And so I would imagine an Anishinaabe is an avid hiker and camper and can do this Niagara Escarpment in less than 2 weeks, twice a year, then it's not so big of an issue. Like, you think of how badly social distancing is affecting our mental health now. Like, if somebody told you there was like this little utopian village where everybody can gather and there's no coronavirus there, but you have to walk there and it's 800 kilometers away. Like, and you're in a Anishinaabe, you're an avid hiker and camper. You're gonna go and walk and go hang out with everybody and go have your ceremonies together. As these are very important things. And so, like, this 800-kilometer Niagara Escarpment is a really good way to sort of shrink this continent. It's not really that far, and it's not so far off to understand the trade route system to be able to get all around the Great Lakes, to be able to get from the jungles and back home. Like, these navigations were dare I say, commonplace. And so our ability to trade tobacco, my really extensive way to just say that, yeah, we used to get tobacco from down south, and eventually it was able to grow here with the help of the genes from the species in the mountains in the southwestern Rockies. But for the longest time, when tobacco was not able to grow here, we had shkodebogoni, which is basically the same thing, except a little bit different. It's a little bit different because it doesn't have nicotine. It's not a nicotine-containing plant. It has a different alkaloid in it called lobeline. And lobeline it's the exact same chemical shape and structure as nicotine. And so lobeline from Lobelia, from shkodebogoni, the original tobacco of this area, lobeline fits inside of the nicotine receptor and it stays there for 2 weeks. This chemical, this alkaloid, has a half-life of 14 days. And after you adapt to because just like you adapt to nicotine will fit inside the receptor, and nicotine will stay in that receptor for quite a few days before it disintegrates, right? As the nicotine wears away, though, that receptor becomes empty and says, fill me back up. And so you'll have withdrawal symptoms or cravings to put the nicotine back, right? And so the more nicotine that you have, the quicker your body learns how to degrade that chemical, and so the faster it wears away, and the faster you need another cigarette. So you'll go from having 2 cigarettes a day to 2 packs a day, and then 1 throughout the night. And because you just constantly need to have that nicotine there because it's disappearing from your body so fast. You cannot do this with lobeline. You cannot do this with Lobelia, shkodebogoni. This one, you can't develop an addiction to it. Once it fits inside of that receptor, it stays there for like 2 weeks. And at the maximal adaptation of metabolizing lobeline, at maximum capacity of metabolizing that alkaloid, you can get down to lobeline having a half-life of 10 days. And that's the half-life. That's not at which you would develop a craving. So anyways, it fits inside of that receptor and it stays there for a long time. So the way that this works is you actually smoke this medicine and it fills up a bunch of receptors, nicotine receptors inside of your body, and it stays there. It doesn't fill up all of the receptors though. It is able to fill up a lot of them. And the relief, the cravings, the withdrawal symptoms are minimized. And so this is why most people can go at least 24 hours after smoking 1 little bit of Lobelia. And a little bit is like when you buy those little Bob Marley pipes, like little weed pipes with the steel mesh on the bottom. You fill that sucker, and that's plenty. You get a couple good hauls. That's 1 good dose. And you should go without a craving for at least 24 hours. This is not everybody. Some people can, like, it's like 8 or 9 and they have to have more already. I have a feeling that a lot of that is habitual. A lot of that might be more linked towards something else rather than the nicotine addiction itself. But anyways, most people go about 24 hours before they can actually get a craving for nicotine. And then instead of having nicotine, have a little bit more Lobelia. When you have a little bit more, there's a little bit more lobeline coming inside of your body, filling up a little bit more receptors with lobeline and not nicotine. And so you could usually get 2, sometimes 3 days without getting a withdrawal symptom, without getting a craving. And then when you do, though, because you usually do at least one more time, you'll get another craving. And so, like, I try to tell everybody, you know, that's your chance. Once you have to have it a third time, like, give it a really good, solid, like, you want to swallow a big lump of cloud of Lobelia, and then that's going to come in your body and really satisfy, really fill every other one of those receptors, and then usually after the 3rd or 4th dose, you'll have 2 weeks of no physical craving to nicotine. After that, it's all in your head, or it's all habitual. But the feeling, though, is really amazing because you're still addicted to smoking. You're just not addicted to nicotine anymore. You want to smoke something, the habitual and the mental aspect of it is one of the bigger hurdles to overcome. But your physical addiction to nicotine is gone. That chemical hook addiction has been effectively removed, and it won't be back for like 2 weeks. And when it comes back in 2 weeks, it's like super weak. And so a little bit more nicotine, a little bit more lobeline, a little bit more Lobelia, you smoke a little bit more and you'll get 2 weeks again with no cravings, no withdrawal symptoms. And what it feels like is, everybody describes it the same, like Thanksgiving dinner. When you're having Thanksgiving dinner, you're on your 3rd plate and you're halfway through your 3rd plate, like just scarfing down. It's an amazing dinner, cranberry sauce and everything. And then they bring out the pies. And you see all the pies on the table and you're like, oh man, forgot about dessert. Oh, but you're real full. Plus you have to finish what's on the plate. But you could see all the pies and you're so full. That's how you feel when you have Lobelia. That's how you feel when you have a shkodebogoni, is you feel full, like you feel like satisfied. Like you if you eat more, you're going to feel a little bit sick. Like if I could eat those pies, but I'm not going to feel good after I eat those pies. Like, you know. And so there's even like a little bit of nausea, which really helps, because when you, a lot of the women in my first session came back and they were like, yeah, I watched, one woman said she watched Young and the Restless and so she got all stressed out, lit up a cigarette, but just lighting the cigarette, she was like, whoa. Like, I can't smoke this. Like, she felt a little nauseous. Like, she felt full. Like, after Thanksgiving dinner. Like, you technically can still eat, but you're going to feel real gross. So it was real awesome. Just kind of everybody's feedback over the years and how similar it's always been. It's like, yeah, you know what? I'm so full. I can't even imagine drinking this, or smoking this anymore. And that's the way that it works. It's just as simple as that. Like when we're working with medicine and with addictions, it's really amazing how, like, with alcohol, with tobacco, with nicotine addiction, like, it just removes that physical addiction. It removes that chemical hook or that need for, that separation, the euphoria. It robs you of your physical addiction. And so it really is that simple. Except I remember one time, I want to give this give this to everybody with a warning, because you kind of got to be in tune, and you kind of got to like get everybody to help you out too. Because one time my buddy, he wants to quit smoking. I like go visit him all the time. He's like one of the most knowledgeable guys that I know, and I go visit him all the time. And then I brought the Lobelia, and I brought it in a little baggie, and then I threw it on his table. I was like, smoke that. And then he's like, what? I don't smoke that. I haven't done things like that since the 70s. And I was like, no, just, it's not that. Like, it's a medicine. You just smoke it. I didn't tell him what it was. And then he was like, oh, okay. And then he found a little pipe. He smoked it. And then he's like, oh, it tastes like grass. And he was real offended. And then I kind of just let it kind of settle down, let it sink in. And then right away, he just lit a cigarette. And then we were visiting, and then I just watched his whole cigarette just turn into ash. Like he lit it, but he didn't smoke any of it. And then he lit another one, and then he's holding his belly, and he was like, oh, what is that stuff you made me smoke? He's like, I can't smoke. He got real mad because he actually really likes smoking. But then he couldn't smoke for like 24 hours. And he's like, if I can quit smoking, that would be good. And it's like you're quitting. What's amazing though is because you're quitting with the original tobacco of the Chibuk, of Nishnaba people. This is what we had. This is what we used. This was what was in our smoke medicine, what we used in our offerings. And nicotania came from the south very, very recently, and sort of it was different because with the nicotine containing tobacco plants, they're massive, and so you could get a lot of it. With these ones, they're very, very precious. These are very, very small plants, except for the cardinal lobelia is quite large. But yeah, they're smaller. They're a lot more work to maintain and manage, and so they're a lot more special. But yeah, you get to kind of quit smoking tobacco with the original tobacco, and so that's a really, really neat idea. My buddy though, he took it, and he was like, you know what? He felt real good that this is the original Nishnaba tobacco plant. So, but it's not tobacco, it's Lobelia, lobeling. And so he's like, okay, I'm gonna quit. I'll use this medicine. So he went from chain smoking to just cold turkey. Didn't even touch one cigarette after, and no problem at all. Every 2 weeks, he'd smoke a little bit of Lobelia, even though he didn't have to. Like it promotes the deletion of the nicotine receptors too. So to really completely remove the physical addiction to nicotine. So he just cold turkey, and then he went powwow trail. Didn't smoke at all. Everybody was like, "What? You quit smoking?" It was really incredible. And then it was like fall, and you know what he did? His wife was like, I'm going to the store. What do you want? He was like, oh, I'll get 2 packs de Maurier Extra Light, like his brand. And then his wife was like, oh, thought he quit. Oh, well, I guess he started again. Okay. Then she went to the store. She came back home, and she's like, okay, here's your cigarettes. And he's like, oh, yeah. He grabbed them, opened them, put them on top of the fridge, got his cigarette out, went on the deck. And then he lit it, and his wife was like, what the heck? Like, I can't even believe it. He was so proud. And she's looking out the window, and then he lit that cigarette, and then he just face planted. He just got real lightheaded, just passed right out, because he didn't start smoking. He just forgot that he quit. And so yeah, he just like face planted, pow. So that habitual addiction, that habit, the mental aspect of it, and that's where most of the work should be dedicated to. Like in a Nishnaba protocol to quitting smoking, that habitual craving is what should hold the most weight. So Because that's what happens. And like he totally forgot after like almost 4 months of quitting smoking that he forgot, and just rolled right into it, right on his face. He had a real solid bruise. He's like, "Come here, I'll visit with you." And then he's like, "Look what you did to me." He was just real black. Oh, it was real funny. Um, yeah. So one of the reasons why I like utilizing this to quit smoking is because the biggest issue with quitting smoking, I think, and it's not me, it's like epidemiology, it's the whole art of smoking cessation. The biggest risk is your metabolism afterwards. So the biggest risk to quitting smoking is that void will be filled. And when you just quit with nicotine replacement therapy and you stop smoking, and yeah, you're on the NRTs, then you overeat and your food choices are just garbage. Usually you have very little control, and so that puts you, so quitting smoking, the actual biggest risk to quitting smoking is diabetes, obesity, metabolic dysfunction, and even a lot of the cancer, I almost said most, a lot of the cancer risk is because of the development of your metabolic dysfunction, metabolic syndrome. Your cardiovascular disease risk is your metabolism is just being destroyed because of the poor food choices, because there's a void there that you're filling. And we don't cover that at all in the Anishinaabe smoking cessation programming, because there's no void to be full. There's no void to be filled. First of all, that void for the first part of quitting smoking using a shkodebogoni is that void is full, and it's full for weeks. And when that lobeline degrades, it will also delete the receptor. So it's deleting the void, and so there's no overeating. There's no really crazy food choices that happen, and you're in control. You've quit smoking. And so when you quit and you gain a bunch of weight, when you quit and you get diabetes, and when you quit and we're nervous about all of these risks, quitting this way using an Anishinaabe mshkike, shkodebogonis, the Lobelia species, then we're very successfully alleviating that risk. So I hope that makes sense. That's one of my favorite things. Like, metabolism and the metabolic risks to quitting smoking are very real when you don't have the Lobelia, and when you quit using the conventional method. And then in that case, using NRT, I would have to implement some of our metabolism medicines like Labrador tea and chaga, and things like that. Yeah, so that's really, really amazing. So and it's really it's super cool, because yes, the nicotine tobacco is what's used for as one of our sacred medicines for pipe carriers and things like that. And it's amazing how many we can hang out with during these smoking cessation programs, and how much acknowledgement there is within our traditional knowledge repertoire, with our elders and with our old people, the recognition and understanding that this tobacco was a gift to us from Jaonong, from the south, and you could see, like, that's where it sits in our understanding, like in the medicine wheel and the sweat lodge. That southern door is that tobacco is who represents that space. That's where it came from. And then to really have an understanding with all of the knowledge holders that we've been working with so far, anyways, that there was a plant that was the original tobacco, and this must be it. And then when you get to spend time with it, it's like when you get to spend time with the plant and you see the way it looks, you see the shape of the flower, you see the shape of the seeds when the seed pod grows, and you see the way the seeds look, the branching pattern of the leaves, and it's like, this is like a little mini northern tobacco plant. And for us to say, hey, yeah, this is this maybe this is the original tobacco that my parents used to speak of, and just the hilarity of our Anishinaabe tobacco being the cure for nicotine addiction from the nicotine containing tobacco from the south. There's a lot of really amazing things to think about there. And so yeah, I mean, with those three things, with the quitting tobacco use, using lobeline, using Lobelia, and the metabolic risk alleviation there, the striped maple, the cardiovascular disease risk alleviation there, and the inflammatory bowel disease risk alleviation with the sweet fern, were set up for a lot of really amazing and yeah, just to prevent the story of everyone that I've watched quit smoking in my life. Like, either they almost died and started smoking again and then lived longer, or they actually, attribute their death to quitting smoking itself. Well, this is why this happens. And so my job to alleviate or prevent that from happening to us in the future. So yeah, I really like this. So the Shkodebogoni, Lobelia, it was understood to be like a really amazing smoke medicine. It was like the original tobacco, all of these different things. But it's funny. Okay, so like Anishinaabe back in the day, I guess, was always kind of looked to as doctors. We were, like, if you were like, there was doctors, there was hospitals and things like that, but when people were actually sick, they'd go to the res. So we were always sought out. That was a gift that we had, and kind of like everybody knew we had that gift, and try to utilize it as much as possible. But what's super hilarious though is the main sort of reason why you would go to the reserve, go to the indigenous community, like have to get go through the Indian agent at the gates to get led onto the res. Like, white people would do this mainly when there was venereal disease, when there was sexually transmitted disease, and when they were affected. Because I guess Jibbuik or Anishinaabe were like the masters of treating STDs. Like the masters. We knew exactly what to do for every single one. And so we had this really amazing reputation for being able to cure STDs, STIs, and all these venereal disease. And I remember learning about Shkodebogoni, and I'm out there picking it, and I get these old guys, these old men stopping and laughing at me, just laughing at me. Like, you don't even know what you're doing. Because I'm like looks like I'm just picking beautiful flowers. And I was like, no, I'm getting medicine. It helps people quit smoking. And they're like, oh, that's not how we use it. And I guess this one here, Shkodebogoni, the Cardinal Lobelia, we remember this as a love medicine. If you know this medicine and you're picking it, you could make anybody fall in love with you. It's a love potion, love medicine. And this is what everybody says. And so it's like, it's crazy. And once I figured out why, it all made sense. So Lobelias all help with different venereal disease, gonorrhea, syphilis, uh, um, all of these different things. And so Lobelia, Lobelia is one of the most famous ones, one that kind of helps with a lot of different venereal disease all at once. So the reason why it's called love medicine right now is because when there would be an STD that sweeps through a community and like this whole town has this is infected with this venereal disease, you could go to the res, get this love medicine, clean yourself up, and you're gonna be the only person in that whole community, in that whole population that doesn't have the STD. And so you could get any lover that you want. And that's how it was used. It was helped to treat STDs, STIs, so you can kind of you're good to go, and the only one in the out of everybody. And so it, like, take your pick. And so like we had this crazy reputation, not just in Schnaubeck either, like all throughout the plains, Haudenosaunee, all the way up into the north, like everybody, Mi'kmaq East, like we had this reputation being able just to heal venereal disease just like that. And so your love life was rocking if you could make it to the res. And so and this Lobelia was one of the ones. So there's like one that grows in the south too. It's called the Latin name is Lobelia syphilitica, and obviously because it has a history of being the cure for syphilis. But these plants have all been studied, and their efficacy in treating STIs and STDs is really incredible. Generally, just like a wash, like a bath. The one thing to remember with these is that you never drink them. You never make tea with these. With the Lobelia, all of them, Cardinal Lobelia, Lobelia syphilitica, Calms Lobelia, Spicata, all of these Lobelia flowers are really, really strong emetics. I call them emetics. That means they make you vomit, and it sucks because they taste like cookie dough. Like this one here, the Calms Lobelia, Scodelia bourgognese, tastes like cookie dough. It tastes so good when you make tea, but you're gonna have nausea for days. Like it's like if you eat something bad, then this is gonna you'll puke it all out. And actually picking your medicine this year, or picking this medicine this year, I found, it was really sad because where we pick the Calms Lobelia is on the shorelines. And we've been picking heavy and seeding heavy on all the shorelines, all as far and wide as we can. And then the water level came up, drowned everything. So it's all gone. So we had like no Calms Lobelia. It really sucked watching how fast that water level come up. There's nothing we could do, but especially because we lived in Peterborough. Anyways, the water level came up, drowned it all. So we had to go inland, and we had to find an ephemeral, like a fen, like a mossless fen. That sort of is the same sort of wet habitat, and find a new patch of Lobelia, and it was very, very thin. It was very sparse. So we spent this year picking a lot there, but mostly seeding, like making sure those seeds are growing like crazy, and It really sucks because it's a really fun place to drive a four-wheeler and then just to fling mud everywhere. And somebody went and did that while we were there. So hopefully they forget about that mud hole and don't really do that too often, because this is the kind of the last patch where I know there's a lot of Lobelia. And we got to spend quite a few days picking it there. It was a really, really beautiful little spot. But yeah, we kind of lost a lot when the water level came up, which happens. So now mainly what I get people to go and look for is the cardinal lobelia. That's a really good, like that. This is the main one that we should all understand and use. So you could usually see it on the edges of swamps, like if you could see all the dead cedar and like just a really typical swamp setting here, and you see all those little red spikes in the back. That's kind of like really telltale the way that it looks, and you get up close and yeah, big red spikes. What's super cool though is that, you know, hummingbird feeders, you could see like the flowers for cardinal lobelia are really long tube like flowers. There's only like two species of butterfly and hummingbirds that can properly drink the nectar from this plant and thus pollinate, and make reproduction successful. So hummingbird feeders, the tall red hummingbird feeders we hang on our home, that's the structure of that hummingbird feeder, red spike looking thing, is mimicking cardinal lobelia. So that catches the eye of the ruby throated hummingbird, and they're like, hey, red spike, fly to it. And they're like, hey, wait, that's not a lobelia. That's not Shkodebogonis or Shkodebogoni. And they kind of like look at it sideways, but you smell, and it's like, smells good, smells really sweet. And so they drink some of the sugar water you put inside, and they're like, hey, it's pretty good stuff. So they'll keep coming back to your bird feeder. But the plant was actually, or that bird feeder was modeled after the cardinal lobelia. And actually, you could find cardinal lobelia, people buying it at Home Depot, like in the garden center of Home Depot. Like it's a cultivar, a common wildflower to find. You could put it in your yard, and it makes like millions of seeds. So, and it seeds itself, it sows itself very well. So you could plant the lobelia in your yard to watch hummingbirds all summer, well, not all summer, but like in the middle of summer and towards the end of the summer, and then once the hummingbirds fed their kids, you could pick it and smoke it all winter. So you get to watch hummingbirds, you get to smoke medicine, or you could pick it for the love medicine part, whatever you need. And then, but it's such you could put it right in your yard. It's so beautiful. So I encourage everybody to do that, if you can, or, you know, it transplants very well. It's very, like, it'll grow in the full sun. It'll grow in full shade. And actually, if you have a shady part to your yard and you put it there, that's where it's like the most beautiful, because it's like so red, but in the shade, it's like it gives off light. It's super, super amazing. But yeah, it grows on shorelines, all around the edges of swamps and rivers. Very, very, very common plant. Any giant red spike that you see, it's probably lobelia. Visit it later in the year, transplant it, or harvest the seeds from it and spread it around. Help it out. It plays a really important role in our ability to live in this part of the world, and potentially serving to be one of our species of, or our original tobacco, which is super cool. Anyways, enough of that. I think lobelia makes sense now. There's a lot of history there. The Calms lobelia, the last thing that I could say is the Calms lobelia is the absolute like strongest species. It oozes this sticky latex if you break a leaf off. This milk comes out of it. It's so loaded with medicine. You get the most bang for your buck with the Shkodebogonis. Even though it's tiny, it packs way more of a punch, like per plant, than cardinal lobelia. So like this is where it's at. And this one, generally you're gonna get it around Georgian Bay, on the shores of Georgian Bay. Doesn't matter where, anywhere. It loves Georgian Bay. Anywhere beyond that or inland, you tend to have a harder time finding it. But Georgian Bay for the Calms lobelia. And then you have the Lobelia spicata. The Lobelia spicata is pretty good, but I would get the cardinal lobelia before the spicata. There's a lot more medicine to be had in the cardinal lobelia. And so all of the other ones, there's Lobelia inflata. That's that's totally useless. Lobelia syphilitica, that's totally useless. Those, you're not going to want those. So if you had to choose, it's either Calms Lobelia from Georgian Bay or the Cardinal Lobelia. And most people are able to find the Cardinal Lobelia either at the garden center or like in like fields and rivers. Actually, this year, I've been saying that forever. This year, I haven't seen more lobelia in my life. Like, I purposely drove around during its bloom all over Ontario, and it was like lined rivers and swamps everywhere. So it is very easy to find. I wanted to make sure that you understood that. Um, um, yeah. So, the other thing that I wanted to mention too, this one is going to be super simple and super fast. But we have, as a part of this, the actual medicines that help with the addictions portion, I did want to talk a little bit about chronic cannabis use. Cannabis as well as a non-indigenous plant. Certainly the strains that are most famous for, that we're most famous for in the Americas came from South America, not here. It's not indigenous to here. That being said, we still got a pretty solid medicine to help with that. So whatever, I mean, like, I guess I don't really have anything super bad that I can and really want to say about cannabis, but other than there's better. Not better as in like psychotropic better, or better as in like THC or CBD and inflammation and all this stuff. Like, when you have arthritis and you use cannabis to help with arthritis, it's gonna help. But if you use Nashtabemshkike to help with arthritis, it's going to take you won't have arthritis anymore. So like, that's what I mean by when I say there's better. When you have anxiety and you use cannabis, it's going to work. It's going to help. There's a proper way to do it. And when you do it properly, it's a tremendous help. But there's better. When you look to Nishnabemshkike for anxiety, like weekend leaves is like, it's absolutely unreal how much medicine we have to help with anxiety and depression. Like I said in the beginning, I had like 60 different species of mental health and addictions medicine. Addictions was maybe like 7-8 different species. All of the rest, over 40 of them, was all dedicated to mental health. So anxiety, depression, PTSD, all of these things. And so, I don't have bad things to say about cannabis use and chronic cannabis use, but to understand that there is better is very, very powerful. So in the treatment of pain and mental health related issues, which is pretty well what cannabis is limited to. Anyways, nonetheless, when we're chronic cannabis users and we get a bunch of arthritis medicine and your arthritis goes away, you still left with the cannabis crutch. You still want the cannabis, and consider yourself a chronic cannabis user and say, you know what? Even though my arthritis is gone, I still want to engage in cannabis on a regular basis. But if you have to travel in between, areas where it's legal and areas where it's not legal, sometimes you have to prove that you've been clean for a certain amount of time if you're jumping from job to job, and sometimes there's drug tests. There's a lot of different reasons why people reach out when they have chronic cannabis use or an addiction to cannabis and they need help to quit. And what we use for that is is right here. It's called Nadwanak. Nadwanak, that's wood betony. And I really want you guys to take down the Latin name of this one, Pedicularis canadensis. That's probably the most important piece, because if you don't get Pedicularis canadensis, you get this purple one from Mexico that people buy online and extract a hallucinogen from, cook it with gasoline and methanol, and then put the reduction on a piece of glass and dry it and scrape it off the glass with razor blades until they have this powder that they use as a hallucinogen. And so people buy these drugs online. People buy this species of betony online that's from Mexico to get the hallucinogen. And if you even just order that online, you'll be flagged at the border because you just try to buy drugs. I had an organization, they made me do the smoking cessation program, and they said, "Oh, we'll order some of that betony." And so I was like, "Okay, stop calling it betony, call it pediculus canadensis, because you're going to end up ordering the wrong thing." They ordered the wrong thing. They had 18-month probationary period where they couldn't order anything from over the border because they try to buy a bunch of psychedelic drugs. And so the medicine that we have here, it's technically it's related, but there's no, like, you can't like even concentrate any sort of psychedelic or hallucinogenic drug from it. It doesn't exist. All you have is just this medicine, and what it does is it calms you down, so you're able to make whatever decision that you want. We actually use this for opiate addiction as well, but because we don't have the time to really go into all that in this session, we use the leaves, and the leaves for chronic cannabis users are smoked, and their desire to smoke cannabis is gone. So like we've done this with people who have to do international travel to countries where they do mandatory drug testing before you get into the country, and you have to prove 3 months without ever using cannabis. And people who were chronic cannabis users, I need help. So it's like, okay, well, here's our medicine for that. Smoke this, and you'll be able to say no. You'll be able to do whatever you want. You'll be calm, and there's not going to be like an anxiety or a like any sort of withdrawal symptoms. You make your own decision, and it's so successful in some really extreme circumstances too, to just calm down and say, I don't need it. I don't even need it. I'm calm, and so. It's really amazing for the people who use cannabis for a mental health medicine. They have a tremendous amount of relief, and it's super amazing to be able to see. So I wanted to make sure that I just say in this one, just towards the end, that at least we also have a medicine that helps to support chronic cannabis use, and these leaves are smoked. This medicine is really, really amazing. Like I said, we use it mainly for opiate addiction, but we use the roots for that. They're a lot more powerful, and we use the leaves for cannabis. And that's what it helps with. There is medicine to help with that. And if we are using cannabis to help with pain, to help with neurological issues, to help with mental health issues, just understand that there is better. Though that conversation is beyond the scope of just smoking cessation. Just wanted to make sure you guys have that option. This medicine too, in case you kind of have to ask around, it's also called Jugashkandoe Zoanak. Jugashkandoe Zoano. That's Jugashkandoe is the flying squirrel. And the way the flying squirrel's tail looks, like if you ever see them flying around at night and the moon is nice and bright, they're the, I don't know how to say, like silhouette or skeleton of their tail looks exactly like the leaves from Naduanak. So some people will say, oh, look, that's what these leaves look like. We will say Naduanak or Naduezoano because the leaves to us, I guess, look a lot more like a rattlesnake rattle than they do So that's what that name is talking about, Naduanak, and that's what it looks like, and it has a really incredible, like pretty beautiful smell. Though when you smoke it, it smells just like weed. Like it smells just like cannabis. Now is not an issue, but this was a huge issue like before legalization because people were like getting like trying to tell the cops, "Oh, I'm smoking medicine," and the cops like, "Yeah, that's what they all call it." Now it's not such a huge issue. I mean, to avoid the confrontation, just don't smoke it in a public place. But yeah, that's the way that it's used. Um, Also, too, though, like if you ever get the chance, there are really, really incredible stories of this idea that every plant, every plant has a creature that has a special relationship to it. Every plant has a creature that it has a special relationship with, whether that's a mammal, a fish, a bird, a bug. And so when you talk about different plant names, a lot of the plant names will emulate those relationships, like Shugakumeoshk or um, Nimepin or what's another one? Oh, blanking. Benekubis. Holy, that one was right there. But there's like a lot when you're looking at plant names for a lot of the names emulate the Nemegosabak. That's the one I was trying to remember. Like Nemegos, like the rainbow trout. And so when you hear plant names, there's a lot of the plant names that refer to that special animal relationship, just like Kojibik is bear root. And and so what I mean by those special relationships is, well, like bear root, Kojibik. Kojibik ligusticum porteri, that's a plant that only grows in the mountains out west. But we love it so much here that we've naturalized it here. And I was told of like some traditional necklaces you could make out west, where you travel into the mountains, you collect them kojibik, the bear root, you bring it back down, and you make these necklaces. You make these lockets, and you stuff the locket full of the powder from these roots. And the way that locket is structured is so that there's a string that if you pull on that string, that necklace will open and fling that bear root dust into the air. And you're only supposed to use this if you need it, if it's an emergency. What that emergency is talking about is if you're getting chased by a bear. You fling that dust in the air, and they'll say, yeah, it makes bears act like they're on catnip, like a cat that uses catnip. That's what that bear will do. And M&R in Ontario, the Ministry of Natural Resources in Ontario, actually has video footage of a bear going up real early in the morning. They kept getting calls. There was a spot by Wawa, just north of Wawa, like a second out of the town, or on up the highway. The truckers kept calling and saying, "Hey," calling M&R, "there's a bear running around on the road. It got hit by a car. It's injured. You're gonna have to finish it off." So M&R would go over there, and there's no bear. There's signs of a bear. They could see scratching and everything, but there's no bear. So they were like, well, and then it would happen again the next day, and the next day. And so eventually M&R was like, well, let's see what's happening here. They put a game cam, and that bear walked out first thing in the morning. And you could see their little video, and then that bear sort of claws at the ground, scratches at the ground, and then it just changes. Its back arches up, and you see it gets super stiff, and then it starts tearing up the ground and runs in one direction. It does barrel rolls. It's rolling around, and it's jumping, throwing dirt around. And that's what the truckers will see, is this bear is acting ridiculous. It must have got hit by a car. It's acting mentally deranged. But M&R was like, oh, no, there's a pseudo-narcotic relationship between bears and this plant. So let's explore it more, kind of thing. But like that's something that we've always known, and like that's what we call it, kojibik. And that's how they use it out west, to change the bears so that if they're coming to kill you, like like revenant you fling that necklace, and then it throws all the bear root into the air, and that changes the bear. So like it's not gonna want to play with you and kiss you in the face. It like you have moments to be able to escape, and so it's used like people always walk around with pepper spray. Like that's not gonna save you. It gives you moments to be able to run away, or like a handgun. They'll be like, oh, I'll carry a handgun if I go for hikes in Ontario because of bears. That's not really gonna save you. You'd have to get like real clean shots in. Like their skull is thick. You get some big handguns, they're not gonna penetrate that. Bears are tough. Yeah, it'll be a mild deterrent. But yeah, going back to understanding the Schnabe Schkikkiadzoen is super important to learning how to live here, learning how to live with bears, having that medicine on us is super important. But this one here, Nadwanak, all of that to just say that plant creature relationship there's something really legitimate about it, and understanding all of them is so fascinating, from bears to skunks to domesticated animals to birds and insects, and like it's so cool. And we have a lot of experience with these so far too. It's really amazing. Anyways, this is horsenip. Naduanak, Jgoshkandavezoano, Pedicularis canadensis, this medicine for chronic cannabis use, also makes a horse act like they just ate a bunch of catnip, if you could imagine that. So its medicinal application in the context of a horse is like if a horse gets depressed. Like my uncle, it was either like him or he like or it was a story that he heard of a horse like hating this dog, because the dog was always chasing it, always bugging it, and the horse always wanted to kill that dog, and then the dog got hit by a vehicle and died, and that horse got so depressed, like that was his little buddy. And that dog was dead, so that horse stops moving. And what happens when a horse stops moving is they go lame, because their heart of a horse is too small for their body. And so what horses have is little pads on the bottom of their hooves called frogs that are little pumps. So when they run, that pumps their blood where it needs to be. So they have 4 little hearts on the bottom of their feet that they squish. That's why they stomp their legs. We always think it's because of bugs. They stomp their legs all winter too. That's to squish their blood with all those little heart pads on the bottom of their feet. Now, when they get super sad and depressed, they stop doing that. They stop moving. They stop stomping their feet, so their blood's not pumping around, and then they'll just fall over, and then they can't walk, and so then they die. They go lame and die, and they can't work. They can't do anything, and so it's really sad. And so that's when you would use this medicine to say. When the horses would get sad, or when they needed motivation to work or motivation to live, they're very emotional creatures, and we would go and pick this nadwanak and use it like horsenip. You'd give it to them, and they go wild. Like you have to be on the other side of the fence sometimes, because they just start sprinting. They get so happy, and just like a cat on catnip, as soon as they smell it, they get all freaky and start tearing at the carpets and sprinting all over your house and slapping stuff. It's like, imagine a horse doing that. That's exactly what happens. And I like to use this nadwanak as a tool to be able to challenge everybody, to challenge you to say, hey, you know what, if you find this plant and you just take one leaf and go give that to a horse and just watch what happens, you'll see. And when you see that reaction, you're going to know there's something special about this plant and its relationship with horses. You're going to know in that moment, oh man, it's super, super incredible to see. And then to sort of look around at all of the other plants and say, hey, you know what? This relationship exists with all of these other plants. And all of these other plants have a creature they have a special relationship with. And it just kind of opens up that learning door to say, hey, there's a lot to learn here. And when you do gain all of those connections, you'll get like, you won't just get horse nip and bear nip and dog nip and cat nip. You'll have skunk nip, raccoon nip, and sturgeon nip, and moose nip, and deer nip. Like there's all the nips you can think of. They're all out there. It's really, really incredible. So I could end it there. All of the medicine to stop smoking, either cannabis or nicotine, and some of the other sort of, I don't know how to say, supplemental stories. But yeah, the actual quit smoking cessation medicine. That's super cool. I'm super happy to be able to share that.